My name is Caitlin, and I'm an illustrator based in Brooklyn. I've illustrated a bunch of books and products, including the Illuminated Tarot and the Happy Houseplant, which I'll talk a little bit about at the end. But I'll start this video by talking about the plant genus Monstera while doing a sketchbook drawing of it. Then we'll do a little show and tell where I talk about the plants I have and my own experience as a Monstera caretaker. And finally, I'll talk about the Monstera illustration I created for the Happy Houseplant deck and coloring book, including a version that didn't make it to publication. Let's get started. So the sketchbook I'm using here is an old one of mine from 2021 where I started and failed to do a 100-day drawing project. To be fair, I did make it to 71, just to give myself some credit. A side note or PSA that it's totally fine to bail on a project like that if you're just not feeling it anymore. I think it's better to move on to a new thing and not beat yourself up about it too much. It's supposed to be fun, I'm pretty sure. So the pen I'm using is a Pentel Pocket Brush Pen. It's my favorite one and it's refillable. The line is a little rough at first in this video, and that's only because I changed the cartridge right before I started filming. I would love a similar brush pen that could be refilled without the cartridges, just for eco-friendly reasons. So if you know of a good one, please tell me in the comments. The sketchbook here is a Fabriano A4 sized with dotted paper. I do find that when I scan black and white drawings, at least from this, the dots disappear. My understanding is that Monstera deliciosa specifically, which is the one we're drawing, is native to southern Mexico, but you can find other species in natural habitats throughout rainforests in Central and South America. Monstera are epiphytic plants, meaning they grow up the sides of trees and other surfaces. They grow aerial roots that help them cling to surfaces and pull water and nutrients from whatever they're being supported by. They climb further and further towards the light. So that's why a lot of people grow them on moss poles or stakes in home environments, because they'll grow bigger and they'll get more fenestrated leaves or more holes in the leaves as they climb up. So why do Monstera leaves have holes? There are a few hypotheses about this. One is that the holes let the sunlight through to the lower leaves as they climb. Another is that the holes allow wind to pass through so they can weather tropical storms with less damage. And a third hypothesis is that the holes allow rainwater to filter down to the roots. One thing I really wanted to draw in addition to the leaves is the Monstera fruit, which I've never drawn before, and I've also never eaten one. So let me know if you have, and if you have, how do you find them? Are they native to where they live, or, does your grocery store have them? Supposedly, Monstera fruit tastes like a combination banana, pineapple, and coconut. If you're growing a Monstera deliciosa indoors, your odds of growing fruit are honestly pretty bad unless you have a greenhouse. If you do, congratulations on living the dream. A Monstera deliciosa has to be at least 3 years old and in ideal natural conditions. So, you need the right humidity and, basically everything has to be perfect, and it's unlikely that it will be in your apartment. You also need enough space for the plant to mature enough, which most people don't have. Something that's counterintuitive about Monstera is that just because the fruit is edible, that doesn't mean that the plant is pet safe. The fruit does have some toxicity to it when it isn't fully ripened. My understanding is that all plants contain some form of these calcium oxalate crystals because it's part of photosynthesis, and some create toxicity. So when you eat the plant or the unripened fruit, you would get a stinging sensation or some other irritation. So it may not be deadly toxicity like some other plants, but it causes problems. So if your pet eats your houseplants, maybe avoid Monstera. So next I'll show you my own Monstera plants and what I would call a micro plant tour. It's going to be a short one because I only have 2. The first Monstera from my own collection that I'll show you is this one that I got from a neighbor when it was pretty small. I'll insert a photo of when I first got it. This was a little less than 2 years ago, so it's grown a good amount. I don't have it on a moss pole, but I do have a support stake. It's next to a northeast facing window, and I'm supplementing with this clip-on grow light, which it seems to love because it put out this beautiful new leaf. In the Happy Houseplant, I refer to this as an epiphyte mix. It's a potting mix that has plenty of air in it, so it's a little bit closer to the plant's natural environment where it would be, putting out aerial roots and climbing on something else rather than all of the roots being firmly planted in soil. In this case, the mix I have is regular indoor potting mix plus orchid bark and perlite just to give it more aeration. Sometimes I also get a pre-mixed aroid mix, which is similar, but it usually has fancier stuff in it like cocoa coir and charcoal. So my other Monstera, and I told you this would be a short tour, is this southwest facing window. So it gets a lot of light in the afternoon. And this one is a Monstera Thai constellation, which is a cultivar or a human-made cultivated version of Monstera deliciosa. I'm not usually susceptible to plant trends, but I love this one, and I bought it probably during the height of Thai constellation mania. They're much easier to find now. I think you can even get them at just like a big box garden center. The reason that it's called Thai constellation is because it was first cultivated in a lab in Thailand. It doesn't grow this way in nature. And constellation because the variegation looks like a starry sky. It has stable variegation, so every leaf will have some form of this type of variegation as opposed to something like a Monstera albo, which does grow in nature, but it has some fully white leaves and a strong contrast in the variegation. I got this as a small seedling from an Etsy seller, and I usually like to get plants when they're small, not only because they're much less expensive that way, but also because it's just fun to watch them grow, and that's kind of my favorite thing about this hobby. Plus you can acclimate a small plant to your home conditions early on. They always seem happier in the long term when they've been with me for a while versus the plants that I got when they were already established and need to grow accustomed to being indoors and being in your home. So now I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Monstera illustration I made for the Happy Houseplant. The full title is The Happy Houseplant 50 Cards for Intuitive Plant Care. And it's a plant care deck, and also there's a coloring book version that I wrote and illustrated that was published by Clarkson Potter. There are 50 illustrated cards, and each one tells you some basic info about a specific genus of plant. So in the original illustration I made for Monstera, I wanted to play with the idea of the plant's fenestrations as they would exist in a home environment, and I thought it would be cute to have a little cat peeking through the holes, like a little jungle cat. I tried different iterations of this idea. I felt that the background was a little awkward in the first version because it was only dark at the bottom, so I tried the second one with a dark background and the cat being more hidden. I was okay with this version, though looking back, I'm glad we did end up changing it. The reason I redid it for a third time was because the editor and the designer pointed out that if a plant is toxic or poisonous, we shouldn't show a pet with it, which is so obvious in retrospect, and I agree 1000%. So I ended up changing a bunch of illustrations from the deck. So the final illustration is really more about the contrast against the bright background and the shapes of the leaves. But to add more interest and detail, I incorporated 2 other Monstera species on moss poles. The one on the left is Monstera dubia. In nature, it has a more shingling growth pattern. And the other one is a Monstera adansonii. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. I had fun making it. I added some color to my sketchbook drawing from the beginning, so here's a final spread. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.